All right, let's do this. How is everybody? This is Unfound Live for March 16th, 2026. I'm guessing some of you alcoholics out there already getting drunk for St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. I guess. I'm almost sure about that. You should know, I am at least 2/3 Irish, and I am like the worst Irish person ever. I haven't been a drinker for a long time. All of those, what'd you call them, stereotypes of the Irish. Yeah, I don't. Somehow I didn't get any of that. Now, I guess I'm more probably, I am, I guess, 1/3 British, probably more British than Irish, to be honest with you. The British, the stiff upper lip culture, I guess that is more like me than those crazy Irish who, I don't know if many people realize this, but Ireland was actually neutral in World War II. If you ever watch any documentaries about the war, it is amazing how little Ireland is mentioned. And even though it's, of course, to the west of England, and we know everything that was going on there with the Blitz and all of that, and what was going on in the Atlantic Ocean with all those cargo ships and getting sunk by the U-boats and everything. It's like Ireland isn't even there. But it was there, and the reason it's not talked about is because it was neutral. Just like Switzerland, if you didn't know. There's a little Irish trivia for you on the eve of St. Patrick's Day. And I know many cities here in the United States, if they have rivers or some body of water nearby, they color it green. I think they'll be doing that over in Tampa. Tomorrow will be just like any other day for me. Hello, Charlie, coming to us from Ohio. I guess you're there seeing your mother. Hello, Lori. Hello, Dee. What's going on with you? I have a great, fantastic show planned for all of you tonight. Put some work into it. I didn't work on it at all until today. I'm going to turn this up a little bit. I didn't work on it at all. Usually I start on like Saturday, but I've been working on some other things. And so I didn't even start working on it today, but I think that all of the topics covered tonight will be live show worthy. As you can see in the title for the live show tonight, I'm going to talk about the disappearance of Nancy Moyer. This got my attention. This is a disappearance that was featured on Disappeared some years ago, but it caught my attention for two reasons. One, like Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, this seems to be a woman who was abducted from her house, or at least her property, although Nancy Moyer, much younger than Nancy Guthrie. And number two, it reminded me, Nancy Moyer in a way reminded me of my sister-in-law, Laureen. Laureen is a smoker, and I was just overseeing my brother on Saturday. We had a great time, went over there to Polk City, hung out, cruised around in his very, very nice golf cart, watched some sports, watched some Mecum car auction. It was a good time. Then Laureen cooked dinner, which was fantastic. But Laureen is a smoker, and so she does not smoke inside their house over there. So she goes outside to smoke. Well, with Nancy Moyer, she's also a smoker, and it very well could be that she was abducted or something happened while she was outside of her house smoking. So I'm going to take a look at the disappearance of Nancy Moyer. I am very sure that I've not ever tried to contact anybody or family. And I am very sure I've never discussed her disappearance on this live show or anywhere else before. Next, disappearance problems. You're probably wondering, well, what does that mean, Ed? A listener sent me an email sometime last week, an article that was written in Canada. It wasn't necessarily an article, it was a letter to the editor. And it was about missing people in Canada. And this listener thought I should see it. And I am going to comment on this letter to the editor. Very interesting. The person brings up 3 major points, and I'm going to reply to all of those points. I'm not going to be too hard on this person, but it does illustrate the very huge misconceptions that the public has, the general public. I know all of you don't, but the general public has on disappearances, even in Canada, even though it's a Canadian article. I think this can be applied anywhere. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm also going to talk more about my new venture, missing persons consulting.com. I'm going to get to that before we are all done tonight because it goes hand in hand with the podcast. So who else is coming here? Hello, Amy D. Is she the one from California? No, this is not from California. Nancy Moyer she went missing from the state of Washington, D. Because there was a Nancy that went missing from her home in Cali. No, she went missing. This is I forget the city right off the top of my head, but this is the state of Washington, D. And hey, Fishing, how are you? Good to see you checking in. Thank you so much for checking in. And then I have some other items that I want to get to before I am done over the next 2 hours. So what has gone on since we all last got together? Well, on Saturday morning, I hit 170.0 pounds when I got out of bed. That is easiest. That's the lowest I've been since 2010. I've never been 170 pounds since I moved to Florida for sure. I think I got down it because I went on a little bit of a diet. I can remember where I was living. It was the last place I lived in Las Vegas before I moved to Florida. And I had gone on a little bit of a calorie counting diet back then. And I know I got into the 160s. So I would have been 39 on the edge of 40, somewhere in there. And so this is the lowest I have been since then. Now, granted, on Saturday, did a little pigging out, which passes for pigging out these days. Before then, when I went over to my brother's and everything. So I woke up yesterday morning at 172, but this morning I was back down to 171. And I think it's just water weight. It's nothing that big of a deal, but I'm continuing to work on it. I don't know where the bottom is yet. It's certainly 168, 167. We'll just see how I feel. And, we'll just have to see. It very well may be I look at myself in the mirror and say, you know what? I still got a little ways to go. And that's what I will continue to do. Hello, Lisa. Good evening, Ed and everyone. Yeah, hello, Lisa. What's going on? Good to see you. I saw that you see, Lisa, that your Kansas City Chiefs picked up the quarterback from the Jets today. Did you notice that? And I'm hoping your son is doing fine, Lisa. So that's what's going on with my weight. I did go and do my food shopping today. Just got the regular stuff, blueberries and bananas and grapes. Got some turkey breast, got some tomatoes, got some rice. Got some peppers that I like to cut up and dip into balsamic vinegar as a little bit of dip. What else? I got popcorn, got some Triscuit crackers, pico de gallo. Like I said, there's nothing in any of that that is going to make anybody fat, even if you eat it in bulk. But got out there and did a little shopping before this storm. We had a storm blow through here today. Very windy, a lot of rain, but it's somewhat calmed down now. Yeah, Lisa, what? No, didn't know about the quarterback. That's awesome. Well, maybe it is, Lisa. And I shouldn't be the one having to tell you about Kansas City Chief news. So you better get up on that, Lisa. In other news, last Wednesday, my trivia team rose to the occasion, and we had a really good night last Wednesday. We finished second, and that vaulted us into, I think, at least the fifth position. So my trivia team is in the playoffs. This new trivia team that I've been with for the last, since like last October. This team has made the playoffs for the first time in its existence, and they're all excited about it. I'm excited about it. And so not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday. There is no trivia this Wednesday. But so a week and a half from now, we'll be playing for $100 cash. And so they're all excited about that. We really rose to the occasion, got most of the questions right. We only missed being first by a couple points, and we got the final question, but all the points on it. It was all good. And so everybody psyched up on the team. Although I am getting together with my teammates on Wednesday. Very coincidentally, we're getting together right over here. And it's a pretty nice steak restaurant right next to where one of the coffee shops I go to. And we're going to have, all of us have dinner there. No trivia, just all of us getting together and talking and everything. And so it's right down here across the bridge, and it's right there on the left. It's a pretty nice place. Just to give you an idea, that coffee shop I go to, I guess it's a little foo-foo. It is in Bel Air Bluffs, which is a little foo-foo area, kinda. And outside this restaurant, it is not unusual to see Rolls Royces and Bentleys and Jaguars and cars like that parked out in front of this place. But they came up with the idea. That's what we're going to do, I guess, to celebrate the season. And so that's where I'll be going. And you can guarantee that I will be starving myself before I go over there on Wednesday evening. I think we even have reservations. It's a place where you have to get, when you go, you have to get reservations. So I don't even know how I'm going to dress. So that'll be a good time. I'll tell you all about it next Monday. I mean, it's been a long time since I've been to a fancy restaurant, because I really don't. The only times I eat out these days is when I go to trivia. That's it, on Wednesdays or Saturdays. That's the only time I eat out. Everything else is at home. On that note, trivia on Saturday, didn't play, went over to see my brother Brian and his wife Lorian instead. We had a great time, like I've already stated. Drove over there, took the Sonata. I'm still driving the Sonata. I'll get into that in a moment. Still driving the Sonata. Drove over there, was fine. Hung out there for a while, came back, got some work done on Saturday night, but it was good to go over there. My brother had just been over here a couple weeks ago for the Styx and Cheap Trick concert, so I thought I needed to return the favor. So it was good hanging out and cruising around on his pretty nice golf cart. It's, like I said, it's pretty nice. So that was what's going on with trivia. As for my car search, it continues. I have missed 3 Mustangs in the last like 10 days to 2 weeks. I literally missed these cars by 1 day. Just a little bit slow on the trigger. I missed 2 in South Carolina that had nice miles on them. Maybe a little more money than I wanted to spend, to be honest. In the total, maybe the car price wasn't the problem, but once you add in the taxes and then me getting there and everything, probably a little more money than I wanted to spend. But the mileages on these cars were like high 40s, low 50s, and they were like 2011, 2012 Mustang GTs. They were nice. One was like a really fire engine red. The other one was like more of a maroon red. Looked like they had been well taken care of, like older. They weren't raced or anything. But in both of them, the day, of course, I can't go see them. Both of them were in South Carolina. The day I contacted, one was a private owner. These places, the person or the salesman, somebody came and looked at the cars and bought them. And then the other one was in like last Tuesday or Wednesday, was a black one in North Carolina. Once again, I called on it. Dealership was very nice, and working something out. That day, they had somebody come in and buy it. I just so close. So now right now I'm looking at one. I called on one on Friday, still waiting to hear back. I did talk to a salesman in North Carolina, another North Carolina car, but different place. And then today I also called on one and spoke to the guy. He sent me some additional pictures and everything in Missouri. I'm like, I have to do this because these cars are hard to find. They really are. And so this one's in St. Louis. As far as what I know about the car right now, it's the right price if it's perfect, but I will certainly get an independent technician to look at it before I would ever make a decision, just like this one in North Carolina. So I got a couple on the line right here. And we'll just have to see we'll see. It just, I felt snake bit. I never thought when I started this in late January that I would be here in the middle of March and still be like, I haven't found one yet. I've just been a little slow. Like I said, it just feels like it's like I'm cursed a little bit. I don't know what it is. So still driving the Sonata. It's been fine. I did have to put a little oil in it this weekend. And it has like 100, let me think. Like 129,000 miles or something like that. So there you go. So that's what's going on since we all got together the last time. Hello, LaFord. Hey, LaFord, what's going on? Good to see you. I hope you're doing well tonight. Good seeing you last night as well. Michelle, what's going on with you? Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Anything else that is going on? Talk to my dad today. He's doing great. Just talked to him for like 15 minutes or something. And they got a bunch of snow in Western Pennsylvania today. And so imagine that. Mid-March, and they're getting a bunch of snow. And today it was nice. Then it got ugly. It's only going to go up to like 58 degrees tomorrow. All right, let's get into the true crime part of the show that will, of course, take place for the next hour and 40 minutes. By the way, if you'd like to support what we do here at Unfound, patreon.com/Unfound podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the join button. PayPal.me/Unfound podcast. And as you are watching tonight, you can hit the super chat button and contribute that way. I would appreciate it. And also give this show a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little button there in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. I want to start here. In very sad news, one of Unfound's guests has died. And her name was Tony James. She is the mother of Bradley Strassner. This is a disappearance that was featured on Unfound a couple years ago. I'm going to read the article that was written about her death right now. The mother of a Vernon Parish man, so this is a Louisiana disappearance. Man missing for more than 6 years has been found dead, according to Beauregard Parish authorities. Sheriff Mark Herford confirmed to the American press that an investigation is underway into the circumstances surrounding the death of Tony James. Herford said her body was found in her car, parked outside her Beauregard Parish residence last week. And in fact, they've already done a funeral for her. Toxicology and other test results are pending. James had been vocal on social media the last few years, accusing Vernon Parish detectives of mishandling the investigation into the disappearance of her son, Bradley Strassner, and alleging that they were covering up his homicide. Strassner was last seen on October 30th, 2019, in the Sandy Hill area in Vernon Parish, according to reports. Strassner, who would be 35 now, was last seen by James when he left his home driving a Ford Focus that belonged to his girlfriend at the time. The next evening, the car was found about 2 miles away, unlocked with the keys inside, but no signs of Strassner. In 2024, Morgan Baggett, the mother of Strassner's son, began a TikTok campaign to highlight Strassner's case, but authorities say there have been no major leads in the case. It's very sad. Just got Tony, frankly, was not one of the guests that I've gotten to know the best out of all 390 guests or how many I've had now. Certainly I traded messages with her after she appeared, but certainly I haven't gotten to know her as well as Joyce Rivituzzo and others. Certainly not. But she did keep me apprised of what was going on. And, really, I could kind of tell even before she and I even spoke for the first time that Tony had some things going on. She was very brash. She was very outspoken about, what she believed happened to her son. And there was a conspiratorial side to her, as is stated in the, of course, in the article itself. I would agree with the portrayal of her in the article. And, frankly, I would not be surprised, with a toxicology report to find out that she might have been on something or she overdosed or something like that. That would not be a surprise to me. It's very sad. I was always truthful I was always truthful with Tony, just like I am truthful with all of the guests. Always. And as you could probably tell just by the way that the article was written, you could probably tell this isn't a disappearance that really lends itself to foul play. I'm not saying it couldn't have happened, but the way it was presented, the interview I did with her a couple years ago, you go to read about the disappearance in what I would call an objective place. I think it is on the Charlie Project and elsewhere. It's not a disappearance where foul play really, really, really jumps off the page at you, jumps off the screen at you. I think you're more than likely to hear that Bradley had his own issues. And it would not be crazy to think that, yes, he did take his girlfriend's car, park it there, and go off into the woods and overdose or something like that. I think that in this disappearance is much more likely than foul play. I very well could end up being wrong. But what I would say is that I can't help but think, as I've talked about before, and I love all of Unfound's guests, but sometimes they are just too caught up in wanting to blame somebody. And that factors into their thinking too much. They're looking for somebody to blame, looking to blame the police. They're looking to blame a girlfriend. They're looking to blame some mysterious figure out there. There's blame this, blame that. And sometimes maybe they end up being right. But I think what we've learned about disappearances after almost 10 years is that when you see a disappearance like Bradley Stracer's, and we've featured many of those. In fact, some of those kinds in my opinion, have been solved. Ones, in my opinion, are like Bradley's. Like Zach Carey, for example. His remains were found last year, among others. Bradley's Stracer's is much more like that than compared to, for example, all of the ones that we know are foul play, like Tyler North, as an example, or one that's not solved, but everybody has to believe it's foul play, like Jody Huisentruit, something like that. And this is why I'm always truthful with the guests, because if they get too caught up in this, if they start chasing ghosts, and no different if they were talking about the smiley face killer hoax, and imagine, think about all of the family and friends that bought into that. Maybe many of them do still buy into it. It's not good. It's not healthy. This can drive people insane when you're looking for somebody to blame, but really, most likely, there's no one to blame. And this is, like I said, this is one of the reasons I never lie to the guests. Now, granted, I'll tell them, it's really no foul play, and they want to think it. I'll give them, I will give them, well, if you think that, well, you might want to try this. You might want to try that. Here's a suggestion. There's a suggestion. I try to do my best to accommodate them. But I also always make sure that I am being honest with them. And certainly that has caused some friction with some of them. And certainly when it comes to Tony, she was not picking up what I was putting down regarding Bradley's disappearance. And this is one of the problems. This is why I get crazy so many times about people who buy into all these sensational theories and try to make families think things that aren't true, that do you not know the damage you are doing to these people and leading them on and all of that. This is what I think about when I'm being truthful. I would rather them hate me for being honest than them love me because I'm just saying what they want to hear so I can remain part of their inner circle and everything. And I have to tell you, it's not important to me to be in the inner circle of any of these people. I have a job to do with a podcast. I'm discreet. I think that I allow them to say about 99% of what they want to say regarding a disappearance, as long as we don't go into defamation territory, things like that. But that's my job. I'm not doing it to stay friendly with them. We're here, we're here to solve problems. And this is what I think about. I think about Tony's death here, and maybe she just had a heart attack or something. But I think that had I been better at speaking to her, and trying to take her away from the conspiracy theories, as it even states in the article, she even thought the police were in on it. Maybe if I had been better at tampering that down, maybe she would still be alive. Like I said, I don't know exactly what happened, but given what I know about Tony, I would not be surprised if this might be a suicide or something. I'm hoping not. So it's very sad. Try to help her out the best that I could. This is one more guest. And what do I say every time it happens? I think that Jessica Curtis, of course, was the first guest to die in Unfound's history, going way back to 2017, or was it 2018 when she committed suicide? Ever since that's happened, and all of the others who have died since, it hurts every time. And I feel like, have I failed? Have we failed in that these people have passed without their own disappearances being solved? And if it's ever made public, maybe you can follow it yourself wherever. Maybe we'll eventually find out what happened to Tony. But like I said, she seemed to have a lot of demons, and even, before I ever came along, and probably having to do with her son's disappearance. You just have to find, for all families out there, you have to find a way to, control things that your mind is telling you. And, these people are very depressed and really, really have to watch themselves. Really, really got to watch themselves. Hello, The Cake. Good to see you tonight. Thanks for tuning in on this March 16th of 2026. And once again, everybody, please, a reminder to give this show a thumbs up. Do what you can do to support this channel and this show that comes out every Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern. So Bradley Strassner, like I said, let me just, if you're still maybe not familiar with that disappearance, let me just see what the opening paragraph was. You know how we start every episode. Bradley Chase Strassner was a 30-year-old from Leesville, Louisiana. He had 3 siblings and was very mechanically inclined. On the afternoon of October 30th, 2019, Bradley left his mother's to return to his girlfriend's car to her. Bradley never arrived. The car was found only a half mile down the road. He was never seen again. So very similar to what that article said. So how many is that? I didn't even put it in my notes as far as how many of Unfound's guests have passed away now. I don't even know that. I'll have to get back to you on. I should have put that in the notes, but I didn't. Sorry about that. So let me just check something here. Okay. There you go. So, Tony James, I hope you rest in peace. It was a pleasure to get to know you. And I'm sorry that your son's disappearance did not get solved before you left this planet. Next, I want to go back. Of course, this past Friday, we revisited the disappearance of Eric Franks. I'm wondering if that episode comes across a little differently now that everybody knows that his car was found intact and running many years after he went missing. And you may be thinking, well, it seems like, haven't you revisited it before, Ed? No, I hadn't. I think if you were thinking, hadn't we already done this before? Probably because it's come up so much. Eric's is a disappearance that I mention once in a while. Of course, any disappearance that has anything to do with a vehicle also going missing. I always say, the more a person and the person's car are missing, the more likely they're going to be found together. And then I always have to say, with Eric Franks being the exception, maybe that's also sticking in your mind. And also maybe just because everybody knows about the very crazy way that his vehicle was eventually found. And it's particularly poignant for me right now because I think it was through Carfax that it was determined that Eric's car was out there somewhere and somebody had gotten the oil changed in it. It's poignant for me because I've been using Carfax a lot over the past month to check on Mustangs, Mustangs that I would see, and you get the VIN and then you put it in Carfax. Has it been wrecked? What kind of service has been done? Have the recalls been done? How many owners of it has it had? Where was it bought? All of that can tell you on Carfax if you've never done that before you get the VIN. And you can do it. Of course, you have to pay. But so it's interesting to me now doing this, and it was like, oh yeah, this is the exact way that Eric Franks's car was eventually found. And if you really do forget how that happened, is that seemingly Kendra, Eric's ex-girlfriend, seemingly gave Eric's car to this guy, Gerald Rutledge. Kendra was this guy's in-home nurse. And then this guy died, and this car was part of his estate. And it got sold in an auction, and the person who bought it, I think in Ohio or Indiana, Ohio, went and got the oil changed on it, and that registered on Carfax. And then somebody in California, I don't even know who this person is. I have no idea. I've never spoke to this. I don't think I've ever known this person's name. I don't even know how this occurred, but that is like the craziest thing ever that somebody did this. Put the VIN into Carfax. It said, oh yeah, the car just had the oil change recently. And through the records, they were able to track down the guy who bought it, and went right into his garage, and there the car was intact and running. Crazy. It's still I consider to be the biggest surprise in Unfound's history. Even bigger than Mary Jane Van Gilder and, what happened with her. And of course, being determined that she lived for like 45 years after her disappearance. I consider that car discovery even bigger than Mary Jane, the Mary Jane story. A unique one. How relevant is Eric's disappearance to all the others with cars that are missing with their owners? I'm inclined to believe not very. I think that when we think about Eric Franks' disappearance, I think it's just another example of a relationship disappearance. What I keep saying, relationships are the number one cause of disappearances. And I don't know exactly what happened there in Michigan that day, but Eric met his death pretty sure that day. And so relationships, and I even stated when we were talking about his disappearance during the think tank last night, um, if Eric had been a friend of mine and he had said, I found out I have a daughter, and if he would have told me, hey, I'm going to move to Michigan to be more in her life, and if I knew that Kendra was already married and everything, I'd be like, Eric, you probably shouldn't be doing that. You want to be in her life? That's spectacular. That's great character. Of course, you just, whatever role your daughter wants to play in her life, that's what you should do. Do not force yourself upon her. You just kind of feel it out. In retrospect, it does feel like, yeah, probably was not the best idea, especially since Kendra was married. He wasn't that far away. If they wanted to meet up or something, meet halfway, if that, it was just a little too much, I think. And I think that that advice would have kept Eric alive. I think that it would have, I don't know what kind of relationship it would have eventually generated with his daughter. I don't know. But this is just, I guess, just a cautionary tale for all of you out there. Should you find out that you have some child out there, it's best to play it very slow, very cool, like that. I even see that. You could even say that, in my own existence with being adopted. I think most of you know that. I think I've told the story at least a few times on this live show. What I know about adoption stories, and I've known several adopted kids around my age, went to high school with a few, went to college with a few, and of the ones that I know who, found out they were adopted and, wanted to meet their biological family and did this and did that and filled out the paperwork and everything else, rarely does it go well. Rarely. What has gone on with me and my family, my perception, I don't know what the stats say. My perception is it's unique. And so being that I know that, although it's, like I said, it's somewhat anecdotal, being that I know that, I can't help but think that something like this kind of the same thing. That most of the time when the guy finds out, an ex-girlfriend had my child, and the guy really, really, really wants to be a part of the daughter's life, I'm guessing that doesn't, not that they end up going missing or anything, but I think you know what I mean. However, I should say this, it is weird. And once again, being that, you get so caught up in the facts of the disappearance and where Eric is. I do have I did have a couple thoughts, additional questions that I don't think, and it was a person in the think tank, patreon.com/unfound podcast, if you'd like to be a member, that brought up an interesting point about Gerald Rutledge. And, they gave him that car. It was in his garage. Were they not afraid that he would not see, like, the news story that Eric's missing? And that his car is missing too? Maybe Gerald had dementia or something in that time. Maybe they didn't have to worry about that. Very well could be. I don't know. But that was something that came to mind. It came up in the think tank last night, talking about Eric's disappearance, because we've never done that before. Would he not think it was weird? Okay, wait a minute. This guy's missing. This particular car is missing. And that same car, a particular car, is now sitting in my garage. And it does, then you have to start thinking, well, did Gerald Rutledge know something happened? Was it let's just put it this way. Sometimes old guys like that, they become infatuated with their young nurses who are taking care of them. Right? That happens. That does happen. So maybe he knew about it, and because he liked Kendra so much, did he take it to his grave? Very well could be. Like I said, I've never considered either of those questions before, but they did come up during the think tank, and maybe now I can get all of you to contemplate that possibility as well. Let's see what everybody is saying. Hello, Rockford. Thank you for making an appearance tonight. Wouldn't it be great to have VINs for all missing persons, cars, cases, as they could be run periodically? Talk about a simple step law enforcement could take that could pay off big. You could do that. As you know, Rockford, there aren't many unfound disappearances that have vehicles involved. I suppose if I had any free time, which I don't, I could contact all those guests and probably they could get the VINs of those vehicles somehow. I don't think that's a crazy, crazy idea, Rockford. At least for unfound disappearances, like I said, because there's not that many with cars. Now, if we're talking about the whole population with cars missing, to get all of them, yeah, that's going to be a little difficult. But if I had more time on my hands, maybe we could do that, unless somebody wants to volunteer to do that. But yeah, that's a great idea. I agree with you, Rockford. Hello, Maureen. Maureen says regarding Eric Franks' daughter, the child was older. The child wasn't very young. That is true, Maureen. You are correct, Maureen. I think he wanted to be with Kendra. Yeah, maybe he wanted to old flame it. Yeah, could be. Very well could be, Maureen. He gets up there. He's not just thinking about the daughter, but wouldn't it be nice if we had a family? And this was something that I did bring up last night. And this is nothing against Eric. Certainly seemed like a good guy. But it did seem like he was looking for guidance in his life. It seemed like that. I mean, that's the reason he was able to drop everything and just go to Michigan and start over. It did look like he was having a hard time finding a direction in his life. And he probably, I'm guessing that he thought, hey, I have a daughter. I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to be the best dad ever. Because once again, he's looking to maybe feel a hole in his life that he thinks is there. And as I stated in the think tank last night, if he's married with kids, when he finds out that Kendra had a daughter without him knowing, this doesn't happen. Of course, he can't go to Michigan. He's not going to go to Michigan. He's not going to think maybe about getting back together with Kendra, on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And probably he's not missing. He's still around all of us. Or even if he was still a single guy like I am with no kids, but he really had a lot of things going on in his life. Let's say I know, what was he into? Was he a musician, or he was into some artistic things? Let's say he was an actor in Hollywood, or he was on Wall Street, working there. It's not like he's going to be able to drop everything and go to Michigan and get involved in his daughter's life. If he had more direction, I think it ended up being a whole host of things that brought about his disappearance. Like I keep saying, disappearances are not just about a date and time. Look at any disappearance. It's a series of choices, events, thoughts, emotions that all then line up for then the disappearance to happen. So you have to look at Eric's disappearance that way. It's not just Eric goes to Michigan, disappears. It's Eric trying to find some direction in his life. It's Eric not really having a career. It's Eric not already being in a relationship, being married, having kids already. It's it's all of that, and then a daughter comes along. That doesn't mean he deserved to go missing. And then he gets all wrapped up in that. And I think there are only a couple options as to what could have happened to him there. Maureen, Ed, did you meet your biological parents? I did, Maureen. Unfortunately, sadly, neither of them are with us. In fact, Maureen, if you see, Maureen, if you're looking in the chat right there at the top, if you see Charles Flat Baby, that is my nephew. And so my biological parents are his grandparents. And I did meet my biological parents. Their names were John and Suzanne. John died in 2002. And then Suzanne died in 2018. I got to know both of them very well, although I should say I got to know my biological mother a lot more simply because she was around for another 16 years after John died. And you should know, though, they were divorced for a long time before that. But I got to know my biological mother specifically well. In fact, my mother, Loretta Densel, who also died in 2018. 2018 was a horrible year. Suzanne and my mother used to hang out together all the time. They'd come out to see me in Vegas together. It was really, really, really something special. My mother was a very special person. And Suzanne was a lot of fun. She was a character. Suzanne, my biological mother, character. Great lady, of course. Loretta Densel will always be, though, number one. Rockford, the Rutledge theory is impressive. I could buy it. Reminds me of the Nico Lisi case, where you have a pretty good idea that there's some guilt knowledge. Okay, that's interesting. All right. I didn't see those two disappearances being compared, but okay, Rockford, Nico Lisi and Eric Franks. Okay, gotcha. Maureen, okay, I didn't realize you had spent time with them. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Maureen, absolutely. Like I said, was around my biological father a little bit before I moved to Vegas. I met him a few times. But after he died in 2002, of course, I got to see Suzanne quite a bit, maybe even multiple times a year. And I would call her once in a while. Like when I had that job driving all over the Southwest United States, like I'd be in Vegas and I'd have to drive down to Kingman, or I'd drive up to St. George, Utah, or whatever. I'd just give her a call. I would talk for like a half hour. This was like before satellite radio and all these things. I'm driving a cargo van. I'd call her and just talk. Yeah, she was a funny, very interesting person. I enjoyed talking to her. Maureen, yes, your situation with the biological involved families. Thank you, Maureen. It's rare that it goes well like yours had. I know that, Maureen. I know. It's very sad. Rockford, the Lisi car was also in a stranger's garage, but chopped. Right, it was. It was really, really, really. Yeah, it was down to the frame. They sold everything on it, but the frame, Rockford. Yeah. All right, moving on. I want to get to this disappearance article, but maybe for the first time ever, I am going to go to the restroom during the live show. So talk amongst yourselves in the chat, and I'll be back in a minute. I don't know if I've ever done this before. That would be a record like 10 years. Maybe I've done it once or twice, but I got to go. And when you got to go, you got to go. I'll be right back. All right. I am back. Thank you all for being patient with that. All right. Let's move on to this disappearance article. That is one of the topics that is in the title for tonight. Let me see here. Well, let me find it in my notes. Okay. All right. What I'm going to do once again, this was not an article. By the way, just to cover a few bases, the Air Force guy still missing. I did see where they found out that he took a gun with him. That can't be a good sign, but of course, all the UFO kooks and conspiracy theorists, think that he got beamed up or, it's a government conspiracy. It's like I said, going back to Tony James's death. This is kind of like the same thing. You're not helping people. You're not helping people when you come up with all these crazy stories, but these people just can't help themselves. You drive families nuts. You're driving this Air Force guy's families nuts. People out there driving Tony James nuts. Just, it's very sad. And then, of course, Nancy Guthrie still missing. In my opinion, no new news since last Monday. All right. This is an article that I don't know where it was. I didn't write it in here. But this was an article that was sent to me by a listener, and it comes out of Canada. It's not an article. It's a letter to the editor. So I guess this guy saw some story about missing people, got energized because of it. I don't know if this guy has any standing in Canada. Does he do a missing persons podcast or anything? That would be news to me. To me, he just sounds like a concerned citizen. But he brings up 3 points in here, and I'm going to respond to all of them. First, I'm going to read what he wrote. I'm writing to you today as a concerned citizen and a father. To be clear, I have no personal or professional connection to the cases mentioned below. Rather, I am one of many Canadians who has spent years independently following missing persons files out of a deep sense of empathy for the families left behind. As a father to a 33-year-old son, I cannot imagine the living hell these families endure. And it is this compassion that drives my advocacy for stronger national policies. In my years of following these cases, I have identified a chilling pattern I call the vanishing window. The mere seconds or minutes it takes for a person to disappear in broad daylight. Your leadership as Minister of Justice and the minister responsible for the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, ACOA, puts you in a unique position to influence the outcome of several vanishing cases currently haunting Nova Scotia and the rest of Canada. I guess this is he's trying to come up with his own term, the vanishing window. The pattern of these instant vanishings is consistent across decades. Lillian Jack Sullivan disappeared from the rural home in minutes, 2025. Dylan Eller disappeared in 2020, vanished from a yard in seconds. It took seconds and took a Delisha dog. Michael Dunahee, 1991, gone in under 2 minutes from a crowded playground. I guess a child. Diane Provost, 1966, vanished in less than a minute from a busy campsite. I have not looked these disappearances up, so I cannot comment on them. Maybe that's something I can do for next week. But he then does bring up a disappearance that I know very well. And he says the path forward. Jason Jolkowski's legacy proved that waiting periods are often fatal. As our Minister of Justice, I'm asking you to ensure Canada remains a leader in missing persons response by, number one, strictly enforcing no waiting periods, guaranteeing immediate police mobilization for all vulnerable persons regardless of age. Number two, centralized data sharing, ensuring that descriptions of suspicious vehicles like the tan sedan reported in the Sullivan case are shared across all provincial and federal borders in real time. And number three, cold case innovation. Funding the forensic technology required to keep cases like Cameron March, missing since 1975, active in the public consciousness. I'm simply a citizen who believes that by closing these vanishing windows through better policy and technology, we can prevent future families from experiencing this nightmare. I look forward to your response on how the Department of Justice is prioritizing these critical safety improvements. Now, here is what I wrote back, the email that I wrote to this listener, not going to use her name. She knows who she is. This is the short version, and then I'm going to expound on this because I didn't want to. I mean, what am I going to do? Send her a 10,000 word email? Not going to do that. So I said, thanks for sending that link to me. The guy should feel fortunate he doesn't live in the United States where the problem is much worse. I'm going to comment on this article next Monday, so here I am. But here are some very quick thoughts in response to each of his points. Of course, number one, what did he say? Number one was strictly enforcing no waiting periods, guaranteeing immediate police mobilization for all vulnerable people, regardless of age. My response to that would be, how is vulnerable, quote unquote, to be defined? If police are mobilized every time for vulnerable, you can look up in a dictionary. I mean, it's there. It's in the V's of the Noah Webster's book. But when you start trying to come up with a definition that's going to work for disappearances, good luck. Now, I know we have Amber Alerts, but that's for an age. We have Silver Alerts, once again, for an age. But how do we do it for people, I don't know, with a learning disability or autism? Or how do we gauge all of that? It seems very complicated to me, and that's why I said, how is vulnerable to be defined? And then if police are mobilized every time, every department in Canada where this was written would be broke. Let's just keep that in mind. Every time a missing persons report were to be filled out in the United States, if they were to mobilize, once again, as this guy says, mobilize police, immediate police mobilization for all vulnerable people, it'd be broke. It's not workable. It's a great idea. It's like that Plato thing. What works in theory sometimes doesn't work in practice. I'll come back to that. Number two, the number 2 point that he made is centralized data sharing, ensuring that descriptions of suspicious vehicles like the tan sedan reported in the Sullivan case are shared across all provincial and federal borders in real time. My response, what qualifies as a suspicious vehicle? Just because somebody said something. Just because somebody said some car was in the area. How is that to be defined? Every vehicle in the area, I ask her. Not to mention, like the disappearances of Sherry Mann and Leonard Dirksen, which I talked about a few weeks ago. The vehicles are well known, and still the disappearances are unsolved. These aren't even suspicious vehicles. These are the vehicles. Now, for Sherry Mann, it's that van with the skier on the side. With Leonard Dirksen, it's a white Ford F-150. These aren't suspicious vehicles. These are the vehicles, and they have been known since the very second that the reports were filled out. No idea. These 2 disappearances are still unsolved, and those are just vehicles that we know were involved in the disappearances, not suspicious, as I'm holding up the little rabbit ears, quote unquote, suspicious vehicles. So how do you define a suspicious vehicle? Not to mention, we're going to determine these vehicles by eyewitness accounts, which are unreliable. If we have to start tracking down every vehicle that was around every missing person when that person went missing, good luck. I'm not trying to be negative. And number 3, it had to do with forensics. cold case innovation, funding the forensic technology required to keep cases like Cameron March, once again, I don't know these disappearances right at this moment, missing since 1975, active in the public consciousness. Simply put, forensics don't solve disappearances. So this is what I wrote back to this listener. So I continued, really, I think the guy has his heart in the right place. However, he obviously is not knowledgeable of the intricacies of why disappearances occur and actually why the investigations go wrong. Note, he mentions nothing about educating police, which I will insist is the number one cure for all of this. Now, why is that? Why didn't this guy say that? Here's why. The general public thinks that police are educated in all of this. They're under the impression that they know what they're doing. And I continue to say police know what they're doing in many, many things. Many, many things. When it comes to car chases, when it comes to pulling people over speeding, when it comes to, I know domestic violence calls are the most dangerous ones they go on, but usually most of the time they get the abusing boyfriend or husband into custody. Those things are all very well known, and really it's because they do those things a lot. But because the public sees them being so competent in these areas, unfortunately, the public extrapolates that to they're good at everything. And they're not. Well, they're investigating this murderer. They're catching this rapist. They're catching this vandal. They're catching this robber. They're catching bank robbers. But when it comes to disappearance, they think the same thing. And it's just not true. That is the mistake where this particular guy is making. You could tell by the way he wrote this that he thinks these are oversights. He's looking at the situation and saying, these people are knowledgeable, they're experienced. All they have to do is these certain things and to make everything right. And that's not how it works. It's no different than having a football team and, teaching them trick plays, when they can't even tackle. This is what it's like. Well, my team needs to do more trick plays. That's how they're going to win games. Well, really, they just need to learn how to tackle first. Probably if they just learn how to tackle, they're going to be just fine. It's not the trick plays that are going to make much of a difference. And what I would say, just honestly, none of these things this guy said would make a difference. Of course, we see that in the United States. We have Amber Alerts, we have Silver Alerts, we have this, we have that. And in fact, it just within the last couple months, it used to be like when I first moved to Florida, maybe not when I first moved, maybe within a couple years, I used to get alerts on my phone all the time. Amber Alerts, and it seemed like people's phones, I'd be at trivia, I'd be at a coffee shop, all of our phones would go off at the same time. Watch out for this, child abducted, this. I can't tell you the last time my phone went off like that. Why is that? Well, at least here in Florida, guess what they found out? Didn't make much of a difference. Didn't make any difference. Didn't cut down on response times, didn't cut down on children being saved, nothing. So they just decided there's no reason to bother the public with all these phones going off and everything if it's not going to solve anything. I don't know if that was controversial, but like I said, I would say that my phone has not been set off by one of those mass messages they've sent out in at least a year. In fact, it might be 2 years. Might even be longer than that. But for a while there, I would say between like 2014 and 2020, maybe this even ended around COVID time. I don't even know. It seemed like phones were going off all the time. Now, I realize it seemed like a good idea when somebody said, yeah, we have access to all these phones. All we have to do is tell all these people what's going on. You know what ends up happening? People just end up ignoring it. You can't make people look at their phones no matter how much you buzz them. Because after a while, it just becomes background noise. That is human. It's not that people want people to go missing or children to go missing or children to be abducted or anything else. It's just the way we humans are. In fact, it's the way any animal is. After a while, we just don't take it seriously. It's no different than, back after September 11th, we remember we had that alert system. You'd be watching TV and the alert system would be on green or red or orange. All of you old enough to remember that? They got rid of it. Why? It just doesn't mean anything. People just end up tuning it out. So when it comes to no waiting periods, guaranteeing immediate mobilization, central data, all of these things, I just don't think it has to start with the people who get the reports. Why we're avoiding that in the United States and elsewhere, I don't know. And I continue to tell you, even what we have the FBI in the United States. Well, Julia Cowley, when I interviewed her, I think it was in the interview I did with her when she appeared on Unfound a couple years ago. And of course, I appeared on her podcast. I specifically asked her, as an FBI profiler, how many missing persons cases did she work on her entire career in the FBI? And I think she was there for at least 20 years. I think she said no more than 15. Now, granted, maybe a profiler doesn't get as many. I don't know. But let's just not take for granted, just because somebody is an FBI agent, that they were overwhelmed with missing persons cases while they were there. Now, once again, why isn't this getting done? I don't know. Instead, we come up with all this technology and mobilizations, and we don't need that. That is expensive. It takes a lot of time. People, once again, get tired of it. There's a better way to do it, if anybody would listen. Now, as far as Jason Jolkowski, and just want to go back to what he said, the path forward. Jason Jolkowski's legacy proved that, quote unquote, waiting periods are often fatal. I have to admit, I think that I know Jason Jolkowski's disappearance as well as anybody in the public on this planet. I'm hoping, that the police there know better than I do, simply because they have the reports. Maybe they don't. But I think it's pretty safe to say I am in the upper 1% of being knowledgeable on Jason Jolkowski's disappearance. And a waiting period idea has never come into my mind regarding his disappearance. Not once. I have it written here. His is not one that strikes me as being a waiting period disappearance. Are there some? I guess, like Eric Franks. Remember, he went missing in March. His disappearance report wasn't filed until November. Certainly that qualifies. Because somebody was pretending to be him with his phone and his laptop. I'll give you one guess as to who that probably was. But Jason Jolkowski, remember, he was supposed to meet somebody. He didn't show up. If we're to believe his coworkers, she went to a local, this was, of course, didn't have cell phones at the time, went and called the boss and said, hey, he didn't show up. Boss like, all right, I don't know what to tell you. I guess he flaked. And she went to work, and nobody realized Jason was missing till later in the day. Who made a mistake there? Nobody. Nobody. Nobody would have handled that any differently at the time. Now, of course, today, if that happens, I'm guessing that the person waiting for him at that high school calls him. He'd probably have a phone. Hey, Jason, where are you? And of course, if Jason's missing, he's not going to pick up. And then, who knows, even then, what are we really, really, really expecting somebody to do? I don't think this person knew where Jason lived. Maybe these days, maybe could pull it up somehow and get his address, I guess. But how much do we really want the average person to go out of the way to track down a 19-year-old who didn't show up for his ride? See, this is where it gets, we're expecting too much of people when it comes to the public, when it comes to alerts and witnesses knowing suspicious vehicles and things like that. We are expecting too much. And the thing is, we know this. We as humans, we know this. We know how this is what it's so perplexing to me. We know how we handle our everyday lives. What we pay attention to, what we don't pay attention to. I've often stated when I'm driving down Gulf Boulevard, during the day, I pay way more attention to the dogs that are getting walked than their owners. And I'm in the missing persons business. It's like we want everybody to be perfect. So I don't think of Jason Jolkowski's as a waiting period disappearance. He's an adult. What was to be done? Now, I realize he had a learning disability and everything, and that might have played a factor, as I've talked about, in his disappearance, maybe. But really, what was to be done in his disappearance? Maybe it should have been investigated differently. But from a police point of view, to my knowledge, there was not any waiting period where, his mother and father, whoever else came home that day, and they were like, oh, they're just going to sit there and twiddle their thumbs. I don't think that's what happened. So what exactly is this guy talking about? I also, when it comes to what this guy says about vanishing windows, I have it written here. You can't find answers if you don't know the problem. And waiting periods are not fatal, as he puts it. Waiting periods hurt investigations. But I think what we've shown over and over and over at Unfound is that sometimes there is virtually no waiting time and still people can go missing. What can you realistically do about that? For example, Tiffany Johnson was only out of the view of her brother for a minute. A minute. Still missing. If you don't remember, she was having an argument with her ex-boyfriend in kind of like this area in their apartment complex. They were arguing. The brother was watching because he was a little worried. He went back inside, came out a minute later. They weren't there anymore. He immediately goes down around the corner. He sees the ex-boyfriend getting in his car and taking off. Tiffany, never seen again. What can you do about that? In addition, he immediately called 911. The guy, the ex-boyfriend, eventually was tracked down an hour and a half later. And with pinging, we know exactly the route that he took during that hour and a half. Tiffany is still missing. Now, granted, that guy went to jail for kidnapping. That's better than nothing. But there's no waiting time. Still missing. Many, many others like this. It's like if you're expecting perfect, it's like the old saying, don't let good be the enemy of, perfection, or perfection be the enemy of good, however you put that. This sounds like perfection. What this person, like I said, I think my insight is that this is an attitude. I think a lot of people in the public, like, I tend to think if all of you had come across this article and read it and saw that the points this guy made, you'd be like, oh, he might not be as vocal about it, maybe as well spoken as I am about it, but you'd read it and say, yeah, I've listened to a lot of Unfound episodes. I don't know if that stuff's going to work. But the general public, I think they would read something like that and it'd be like, oh, yeah, even though they know that's not how they behave. I think of it no different than people always complaining about politicians. But when it comes to election, these people keep voting for the same politicians over and over and over. It's that kind of thing. The way I look at it, most disappearances could have been started to be investigated in the quickest time officially possible, and many would still be unsolved. It sucks. It really, really sucks. But that is the way I see it. I don't know necessarily which ones those are, but I'm pretty sure that that's the case. I'll read it again. The disappearances that have been featured on Unfound, many of them could have been started to be investigated in the quickest time possible. So from the very first second that somebody noticed that the person was missing, in the police saying, well, we have to wait 24 hours, 48 hours. We know it's all crap. Could have still been done right at that time. And I think a lot of these would still be missing. These would be unsolved. Not because of the waiting period, but because the people doing the investigations didn't even know where to start. That's the problem. The problem is the investigation. Good investigations can overcome waiting period problems. Understanding why people go missing. Understanding that, yes, people really do walk off. And that's what I think happened to Bradley Strassner. People really do walk off. People really do walk into the woods and disappear and overdose and aren't found. That happens. People really do walk out of their lives and commit suicide somewhere. And yes, people in seemingly good relationships, yep, the husband can kill the wife and make her disappear and get away with it for decades. These things happen. I guess what I'm also saying here is, obviously, like I said, this guy that wrote this, obviously his heart is in the right place. But passion is not productivity. Passion is not productivity. It's a lot of heat, but no fire. I'm all ticked off. Let's do something. Let's get a law passed. Let's get a petition signed and everything. I continue to think that we're doing everything but what really needs to be done. And I know that maybe it's a little self-serving for myself, because I think that I could teach, officers on the beat, what they should be looking for and the questions they should be asking and all of that. That would go further than anything that person has wrote, and farther than any law. I continue to believe that. Look at it this way. What if there was no teaching regarding murder investigations and protecting scenes and everything else? What if that were the situation? would everybody just automatically think we need another law to solve homicides? No. Would be thinking, you know what? Police have to get better at protecting crime scenes. They have to get better at, protecting the fingerprints and making sure people don't walk through the thank you. Wow. That has to be a record. I'm going to comment on that in a second. If we had a bunch of police officers trying to investigate murders, but botching it up, who would really think that we need a law to make them better at it? No, what we would be saying is, you know what? I think these guys need a little classroom work. I think they need to be taught about how to protect evidence and save crime scenes and interview witnesses and check video and all of those things. We don't need any more laws. We need better investigations. But that's not what this person, and I don't think that's what anybody else is offering out there, except me. All right, on Texas time. Oh my goodness, this has to be a record. I don't even know what to say to this. Even I might be out of words on Texas time. I really don't even know how to thank you, except to say thank you. Wow, thanks for your hard work and integrity, lurker behind the scenes. I thank you for that generous contribution tonight on Texas time, 6690. I don't thank you. I don't know. You say you're a lurker. That's fine by me. You do not have to reveal your name, but thanks. It is deeply appreciated. And on Texas time is done there is on Texas time has hit the super chat button and contributed a very generous amount to Unfound. Thank you very much. I promise, and this goes for all of you, I will promise to continue to work hard to earn your respect. I think about it every time I start recording an episode of the podcast or showing up here on Monday nights. I never take it for granted. I know a lot of this is, what have you done for me lately sometimes? But I always try to come to this microphone knowing that I always have to work very hard to earn your respect. And that's the way it should be. This is a very serious topic, and you cannot be flippant about it. And so once again, on Texas time, 6690, thank you so much. I really, really deeply appreciate it. Thank you. Let's move on. So that was the disappearance problem section in the title tonight. Let me now go, before I get to Nancy Moyer, who is going to finish out I'll finish out with her tonight. I do want to tell you about my new venture and why I am going to be cutting down some on my podcast work. And podcasts will still continue to come out on Fridays, but you can expect some reruns, a little more reruns than usual to be showing up. And this is a website that got put together for me last year. And only recently have I personally been able to tweak it to get it to a point where everything works. And that is my missing persons consulting venture that I've officially started. Of course, you heard me mention it at the beginning of last Friday's Eric Franks Revisited episode. The website is missingpersonsconsulting.com. To my knowledge, it is the only thing of its kind, but it's a direction that I wanted to go, have been wanting to go for a while. And I've kind of been testing it out behind the scenes, probably with disappearances that will eventually appear as episodes. But looking at, of course, going way back to Cameron Remmer, if some of you were around for that back in 2019. But more recently with Cindy Anderson. Also, Leonard Derrickson, who, of course, I talked about just like a month ago. But since then, I've gotten to talk to his family. But just getting a feel for talking to people and not being concerned about whether the disappearance is going to end up on the podcast or not. Because this is what this is going to be. Where missingpersonsconsulting.com, you can go there and there is the book a consultation, and I have a schedule made up. Person can pick out when that person wants to talk to me. The fee is $350 for an hour. At that time, when they sign up, they will get a questionnaire automatically emailed to them. They will fill it out. There's like 10 or 11 questions. Most are yes or no, but there are some essays describing the disappearance and everything. Of course, if they have any records and reports and everything, they can email them to me at the email address that I'm using for that. The standard will be that they have to make an appointment a week in advance and then get the materials to me within 2 days of them signing up. So I have more than enough time to go over everything. Then when the time comes, I will get together with them, maybe on Zoom, maybe on the phone, and I will go through everything that they gave me. Of course, I'll be prepared. And for that hour, I will tell them what I think they need to do to move their particular disappearance forward. And this will not just be limited to families. I'm opening this up. If law enforcement wants to talk to me, of course, I'm always ready to do that. If there are any private investigators, you know how I feel about them. But if they're going to get better, I have to be in the business of doing that. So if any private investigators want to contact me, if they've been assigned something, they're working on something, they can reserve time for me. And attorneys, report journalists, anybody like that will be able to sign up and talk to me, and I will give those people the best advice by looking at the information they send to me. And remember, I am a guy with now 400 disappearance of experience. Of course, the whole Steve Pankey thing. I've actually spoken to criminal justice majors at a variety of universities here in Florida and one in Louisiana. I do have a record with 90% accuracy. I can predict the resolution to a disappearance. And I'm going to be using all of that to help people. And like I said, it's $350 for an hour, in which I will just tell them how I look at this disappearance, what I think most likely happened, and how they can maybe get back on track. Maybe they don't even know what track they need to be on. I will tell them what is probably best to be done now. And so you could go check it out right now. missingpersonsconsulting.com. You can see my resume there. You can see what I have written there. And it has listed what I will be doing for people who sign up, because I continue to believe that these disappearances, even though I'm willing to talk to law enforcement or whoever, I still believe that families and friends need to take responsibility for their own disappearances, especially ones that are 10 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old. Getting the older, the more likely I'm inclined to believe you're just going to have to do these things yourself, because the police are not going to block out time to do anything. And plus, they probably don't know what to do, unless, of course, they come and reserve time with me. And then even if they send me a police report, I'll tell the police, here's what you've done wrong and here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to do. And, I guess kind of one of the things of doing this is, I don't have to look at this. I won't have to look at this from an interview point of view. I will get to just talk to them, and they're just going to, kind of, being that they've already given me the information already, all they have to do is sit there and listen. And I'm going to tell I'm just going to not just tell them, well, here's what needs to be done. Here's what I think happened and everything. I'm going to give them the reasons that I've learned over the past 400 disappearances from Tiffany Johnson, Jason Jolkowski, and the rest of them. And really, considering what I know some of my guests have paid private investigators who, because they don't know anything about disappearances, are just wasting these people's money, I think I'm coming across pretty cheap. I know that surely many of my guests, even though, once again, I have never, when it comes to the podcast, I have never charged anybody a penny, ever. But here's what I also know. I know my guests well enough at this point to know that had somebody come along before I came along and said, you know what, I really, 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 really can get you back on track here because the police got this wrong and your private investigator got this wrong. I think I can get you back on track. Those people probably would have paid good money for that. So I don't think what I'm charging is even close to being outrageous. I know there's some private investigators who have charged families like $10,000 and have got no results. No results. So once again, that is my new venture. That's what's going to be taking up some of the podcast time now. I'm also going to be working on some other things, but those are much more in the development stage. I'm not really ready to talk about those right now. But this is what I'm going to get off the ground here in 2026. So I hope you will go check it out, spread the word around. You all know me. You know I'm never going to lead anybody down the wrong path. You know that I'm going to do everything for these people. I'm going to give the best advice that anybody could ever give on these disappearances. So please spread the word. Missing Persons Consulting.com. That is the new venture. Let's now talk about Nancy Moyer. Like I said, it caught my attention because it very well may be that this woman was abducted from her home. And of course, that's on everybody's mind these days because of Nancy Guthrie. And then also because I saw my sister-in-law, Lorraine, this past weekend, and she loves to sit out and smoke. And it seems this might have been what Nancy Moyer was doing when she went missing. All right. And this will take up surely the rest of the time. Nancy was last seen in Tenino, Washington on March 6, 2009. So we just passed the 17-year anniversary. She worked as a financial analyst for the state of Washington. She left work at 5:15 p.m. You've done research on her, Maureen. Interesting. She drove a coworker home, brought some items home, bought some items at a thriftway, paying by check at 6:45. This is the last time anyone saw her. Moyer's two daughters were visiting her estranged husband for the weekend when he, Tenino. All right, Moran, I knew I'd get that wrong. When Moyer's two daughters were visiting her estranged husband for the weekend when he took them back to their mother's home on March 8th, so 2 days later. So she goes missing on a Friday. He comes over on Sunday. She's not there. She's missing. The front door was ajar. The television and living room lights were on. There was a partially consumed glass of wine on the coffee table, only one. And the bedside lamp in Moyer's bedroom was on. Her identification, purse, car keys, wallet, cigarettes, clothing, and toiletries were all in the house. I'm going to come back to the cigarettes later. And her car, a white Honda Civic Del Sol, was parked out front. She was reported missing at 5 p.m. on March 8th. So it seems like the estranged husband did the right thing, calling this in as soon as possible. An extensive search of the home turned up no indications of a break-in, of a struggle. Moyer did not own a cell phone. I'll come back to that. And her credit cards and bank accounts have not been used since her disappearance. Her family stated she would have never left of her own accord and abandoned her daughters. She wasn't dating anyone, I'll come back to that, or having any personal problems at the time of her disappearance, and she had no drug issues or mental illness that could explain her disappearance. She had worked for the Department of Ecology for 12 years, and her employers described her as a reliable worker and who would always notify them if she had to miss work. So, and by the way, she was in her 30s, I believe, at the time of her disappearance. Maybe she would be in her early 50s now. So, as you can see, kind of maybe a little bit like Nancy Guthrie, woman at home, and things kind of left as if she left in the middle of something or was abducted in the middle of something, kind of. And you should know that Maureen's saying, I worked with her daughters at Tenino Elementary School. Wow. All right, Maureen. Boy, this is close to you. You should email me. Don't put anything in the chat, Maureen, but if you want to email me at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com, I'd love to maybe hear the local stuff. Now, it should be known that a suspect was identified some years later. His name is Eric Roberts. No, not the actor. Seemingly, allegedly, as was written in on the Charlie Project, it could be that Nancy was dating this Eric guy's nephew. Of course, the problem is, in other records and other news, it says she wasn't dating anyone at all. But 10 years later, a neighbor said he killed her while having sex at his place, not her place, his place. And he was charged, but then those charges got dropped. There was no evidence. People were suspicious of him. There was talk of a concrete slab. That didn't go anywhere. And once again, this happened years after Nancy went missing. This guy did not come forward at the time or even a year later. I don't even know if they even thought of him as being a suspect before he came forward and admitted to it. I don't know if this nephew was ever considered a suspect. Was he really dating Nancy or not? It's hard to say. But Eric claimed that he did it. Then he retracted his statement. And then there was a woman who knew him who said, oh, yeah, he was violent with women and all these. None of this has gone anywhere. All right, that's what's most important to know here on March 16th of 2026, that despite all the hubbub and charges and him saying he did it and everything, eventually he retracted it. And since then, I don't know if he's kept his mouth shut. I think he's been in jail for some other reasons. Now, as I stated, the cigarette, there's a discrepancy there. On the Charlie Project, it says her cigarettes and lighter were inside the house. Whereas I went back and looked at a few articles from the time that she went missing. It's very clear that, at least at the time, they reported that the cigarettes and lighter were actually outside. They were on a chair or something like that. They were not inside the residence. They were outside the residence. It's a discrepancy. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know who's right, but certainly it does change the perception of what we might think happened here. Certainly. Okay, certainly. Now, also remember this Eric guy who claiming that they were having sex and he strangled her or something. He said this happened at his place. But would she really have left the TV on? Would she really have left the door ajar to her house? Would she have left the lights on? Would she not have taken her cigarettes and lighter with her if she went over to this place? This is what also causes me to think that this Eric guy, of course, many of you know my attitude toward all of this anyway. True killers don't say anything unless they're writing anonymous notes to the police or the media like the Zodiac killer did. People generally, I should say 99% of the time, if they kill somebody, they're not going around claiming that they did it. People like to get away with crimes. Whereas I think what we've learned on Unfound, we have many disappearances where we know foul play occurred. What do we also know about those disappearances? Those particular, mostly men, say nothing. Nothing. They claim, oh, yeah, my wife took off. I don't know where she went. Oh, yeah, well, she said she was going to leave me. Those things. They don't talk about, oh, yeah, I murdered my wife and I dare you to prove it. They don't go out bragging to friends and buddies down at the bar. Oh, yeah, I killed my wife a year ago. True killers don't do that. But this discrepancy is something the cigarettes, and then the ex-husband seems to have an alibi. This does seem to have happened on Friday evening when he would have been with his daughters, and I think his daughters would have certainly been old enough to know what was going on. It also doesn't seem very likely to me, given that there was wine out and the TV was on, that this all happened at 3 a.m. either, where he, once he gets the kids to bed, he drives over to Nancy's, drags her out, kills her. This does not look like that type of scene to me. Maureen says, seems like she was smoking on the porch. Well, that very well may be, Maureen. Unfortunately, there's discrepancy in the information where some places say the cigarette and lighter were inside, not outside. So I don't know. So what questions, if I were to talk to somebody in Nancy's family today, what are some of the additional questions? What are some things that I would need to know to have a better idea about this disappearance? And by the way, going back to the missing persons consulting that I'm starting, this is actually in the questionnaire. Make sure you tell me everything about the person. So questions. Why didn't Nancy have a cell phone? Did she really not have one? This is 2009. She was in her 30s. She certainly would have had enough money to have one. She didn't have a cell phone. I would want to know a little. I know it probably has nothing to do with his disappearance, but it's certainly an interesting choice in 2009 terms. If it's 2003, 2004, then that's not even catching my attention. But 2009, I need to know more about that. How much of a smoker was Nancy? Was she a pack a day, 2 packs a day, 5 cigarettes a day? How often was she going outside to smoke? Really, truly, was she dating anyone? Because in the Charlie Project, it says she wasn't, but then later, she's dating this guy. And I think even in the articles that I read, it says she wasn't. So what's the truth there? Obviously, that's very important. Did she have a man in her life? Dee Dee says, I didn't get a cell phone until 2015. All right, Dee Dee. All right, I guess. I once again, well, if you go missing, I'm going to want to know more about that. Did Nancy have any complaints about anybody? Wouldn't want to know that. Was she much of a drinker? As it stated, glass of wine there, seemingly 1 glass, so it doesn't seem like anybody else was over there. Was she much of a drinker? What were her plans for that weekend? Obviously, the girls were with her father, so she was footloose, fancy free that weekend, single woman. Anybody know what she actually had plans for that weekend? And maybe also, when the kids were with their father, what did she usually do on Friday nights? What was her social life? I'd want to know more about why the divorce happened. What was of course, it seems maybe he has a pretty good alibi, but I would still want to know more about the divorce. What was the issue? Was he cheating on her? Was there abuse? Maybe was she the one that caused the divorce, not initiated it, but maybe he was the one that filed for divorce because of something she did. Be interesting to know that. Did the ex know about her dating anybody? Did the ex-husband suspect that she was dating anyone? Maybe he would care about that. Maybe he wouldn't. Would he even remember that now? Hard to say. But I think we really need, being that she's a single woman living by herself, she's in her 30s, I think we really, really, really need to know a lot about her social life. We really need to know that. So those are some questions that would help me get a much better picture of what kind of disappearance are we talking about. It could be a walk-off. Could be a walk-off. There is no evidence to say otherwise. She could have just walked off. Maybe she was depressed. I don't know. And walked off. Maybe she started a new life. But it also could be foul play. So here are some of my insights. First, I think it's important to understand the location. That her house sat on a corner of an intersection. Her house sat at a corner. So there was a road that went by like in front of the house, and then there was a road that went by on the side of the house. And certainly the house wasn't right up on the road, but certainly anybody driving by would have seen her sitting. If she were on the front porch, anybody driving by would have been able to see her very easily. And the other thing, though, is there was a building. It maybe looks like somebody was living there, but it could have been like a small garage, fixing cars or something very close, like sitting there next door. So who owned that? I don't know. But the house is on a corner, and people driving by would be able to see her from a couple different angles. I think we have to think about that. Somebody sees a woman sitting out by herself, just chilling. Like I think of my sister-in-law, Laureen, out in front of their place over there in Polk City. That's what comes to mind. House was very visible from the road. Let's see what Maureen's saying here. Amy says, drug user. Nothing about that in anything I saw, Amy. Don't know. Maureen, yes, the man that was riding with her to work, she was uncomfortable with. Okay, interesting. That's what the hardest part is. They really couldn't get straight answers on the questions you asked. Well, maybe it's time to give it another shot, Maureen. I'll take a pic for you of her house. I've seen it, Maureen. I looked on Google Street View. I went there today. I saw it. Thank you, though. I got it. Roberts claimed he killed her at his place, yet the door was ajar at her place. Yet the TV was still on at her place. The lights were still on at her place. The glass of wine was half full at her place, and there was only one. The cigarettes and lighter, no matter if they were inside or outside, were at her place, but he's claiming he killed her at his place. This Roberts guy, I just don't think that he's very believable. I can see why police got very interested in him. Of course, if somebody's going to claim they murdered somebody, you have to take it seriously. The cigarette issue is the part that makes this somewhat vague, and it's hard to really get a overtly good feel for it. The scene, no signs that someone else was there, only one glass of wine. Perception, went outside to smoke and got abducted, or she walked somewhere close and left her. But as we know, unless she thought she was just going to walk somewhere and come right back, and that's why she didn't take her cigarettes and lighter. We know smokers don't go anywhere. If they think they're going to be gone for an hour, they take their cigarettes and lighter. Whereas if they think they're only going to be gone for 5 minutes, then they'll leave them behind. But that wouldn't explain why the door was open. That's the problem. There were no signs of violence, just kind of like she up and left. Took 2 days to figure out that she was missing. This isn't something else that is sticking with me. Did she not have any friends? Did she not have any plans for that weekend? Even if she was calling, did she have any siblings? Maybe a parent or something? Remember, it's pretty sure she went missing on a Friday. It wasn't until 2 days later when the ex brought the kids back that it was called in. That is also a little hard to understand. I don't have, once again, I'll say Eric Roberts. I'm not believing it too much. Was she or was she not dating someone? It's unclear. So we have some really vagueness on this. No signs Nancy was having anyone over. Once again, there was only one glass of wine. There's no signs that anybody was there eating or with her. And although Eric Roberts' name is mentioned, it's unclear why the nephew's name is not mentioned anywhere. And I know we think nephews, maybe we think young guys. I don't know what this nephew's age was. In addition to everything else, murder is hard to understand with Eric and the nephew. I mean, what are we thinking here? It's kind of like, once again, with Nancy Guthrie. What are we actually thinking here? This disappearance reminds me of Linda K. Carroll, a Florida disappearance covered early on in Unfound's existence, where she had moved on. She was still married, but she and her husband were estranged. She had gotten her own place up there in the Panhandle, and it is believed that her estranged husband, who had the kids at the time, drove to Linda's, busted into her house, dragged her out, and killed her. Now, of course, there were signs of violence. There was a broken mirror. Her hair was stuck in the door jamb and all sorts of things. And there was a neighbor who saw a car or heard a car motor off. What's hard to understand is if this was, of course, when we think about something like this, we think of, well, it's a woman. It had to be sexually motivated. I think that's a reasonable idea. What's hard to understand is the disappearance part of it. If somebody wanted to rape her and kill her, why was she not found dead in her house? Because she was obviously there. It's a little difficult to understand. If the motive was, as it usually is with women, single women, rape and murder, most rape victims, if they are murdered, are usually found. What would be the reason for her not being found? And plus, she's in her house. If some guy wants to do that to her, she's already there. It's already, she was just sitting there, whether inside or outside. What's the issue? It's hard to understand. This is not what I would call an automatically straightforward foul play disappearance. It most likely is foul play, but I'd only put it at 70%, 75% likely. I think there is a notable minority view that should be considered for this. And you say, well, Ed, the door's still open. Well, I think there have been people who tried to make it look like they got abducted, but weren't. And I have to be open to that. Like I said, there's just too many things here regarding the cigarettes. Was she dating somebody? Was she not dating somebody? That it's just too hard to come to a firm idea. But probably a murder, but I would not say overtly probably. Not overtly so, even though I know that's what other people would think. Well, you just have to be a cynic regarding all of these things. To me, Eric Roberts is not a likely suspect, despite his claims, although the nephew could be. Maureen says they think someone pulled up, wanted to talk to her for a minute, and they drove off. Well, I don't know, Maureen. Why is the door open? How did they get her attention from inside the house? That she walks out and leaves the door open? That's a little hard to understand. If she's outside. Did she really leave the door open? And the glass of wine's on the inside, not the outside. There's just something about the setting that doesn't seem like that would be likely, Maureen. No, she really didn't. Their parents very wacky to me because they were very quiet. Okay, Maureen. So it's probably a murder, but I don't think I think if it were Eric Roberts or his nephew, I think this would have been solved by now. Maureen's bringing up the idea maybe it was the guy that Nancy drove home. Did he know that she was going to be home alone? He goes back over there. Could be, but this does seem like a disappearance that happened in the evening. And wait, he went over there and dragged her out. It's just not overtly clear to me. So if anybody can get me that information, was she really in a relationship with somebody or not, and where the cigarettes really were? Certainly, if they were really outside, then I could see somebody coming up there and abducting her. But if the cigarettes and the lighter were actually inside, then to me, the likelihood of being a murder, actually, the probability goes down in my mind. That's the best I can do. All right, so that's all I got for tonight. As for this Friday, not sure what we're doing this Friday yet. Like I said, podcast time being cut back a little bit, so these things will tend to be up in the air a little bit more than they've ever been. That's all I can tell you. Time being devoted to other disappearance stuff. But that's all I have for you tonight. Thank you for tuning in. I ran over a few minutes tonight. Don't hold it against me. And once again, I need to thank On Texas Time 6690 for the very, very generous contribution. I don't even know where to start with that. Thank you so much. Everybody keep your heads on. Swivels out there. Do not become a victim. Do not end up on my podcast. Charlie, say hi to your mother for me tonight, being that you're there with her, I guess, and I guess the boys are back in Colorado. I hope you all have a great time there in Ohio. And we'll do this all again next Monday. Good night.